Peter King, Football Morning in America. His coverage of the Texans, Seth, was about that game on Sunday. Like a lot of folks, it seems like the fallout of the Texans' win over the Steelers on Sunday is way more about, oh my God, what are the Steelers? As opposed to, man, look at these plucky Texans. And that's what it was for Peter King. It was way more of that. But that said, he does his awards each week, like Player of the Week, offensively, Player of the Week, defense, Coach of the Week, think this and that. And he usually gives 2 or 3 of them in each category. Henry To'oTo'o got one of his Defensive Player of the Week awards from Peter King.
Oh, good.
Does that
good.
pass the eye test for you?
Yeah, I think I don't know about making him the Player of the Week, but in terms of like being on the right trajectory, yes. Because he did. Like any rookie performance, you're going to have a lot of mistakes. And I think he and Christian Harris there's still moments where they're just kind of sitting back and catching blocks and not always really immediately taking the fight to the line of scrimmage. But he's offsetting that with a lot of moments where, man, like you could see it on the TV copy, obviously, just where he's shooting gaps and making plays in the backfield, and it's starting to come to him more naturally. So you really see the potential there for a guy that plays maybe above and beyond his combine measurables. Because you watch him, when you watch him move in space, he doesn't look all that fluid athletically or anything, but he's the classic kind of guy that his strength will be if you can recognize that much quicker and take the direct line to action. It doesn't matter that he can't run a 40 as fast as various other middle linebackers. And he's also, I think he shows a lot of aptitude in coverage. So yeah, there's a lot to get excited about there potentially. He
had one of the biggest plays of the game with that pass breakup in the end zone on George Pickens. That was a huge play because the Steelers were, the doors were closing in on the Texans at that point in the game. Bobby Slowik got his Coach of the Week award, Peter King's. That does pass the eye test. That Bobby Slowik went out and schemed up a game against the Steelers with backup offensive lineman and C.J. Stroud, a rookie quarterback, threw for 300 yards. That does pass the eye test right there.
Yeah, that sure. And a lot of it too. And honestly, like every time I talk about this, it seems like somebody feels it necessary to point out like somebody else that I'm neglecting. So here I'll say it. I think the offensive linemen individually played above their pay grade. Mm-hmm. The Chris Strausser, the offensive line coach, deserves a lot of credit for it as well. C.J. Stroud does a very good job getting rid of the ball quickly, and that helps. And then I think first and foremost, as far as what it means on the entire season, Bobby, this is what's important. I think Bobby Slowik gets the whole picture in a way that Bill O'Brien just never did. There was just too much evidence in the time that Bill O'Brien was here that the attention to detail in the run game, the attention to detail amongst a lot of things on the offense just wasn't there. Schematically, they did a lot of really smart things, a lot of interesting things, but there was just never the attention to detail. I think with Slowik, you really see that attention to detail, which allows you to do some of the more creative things effectively. Instead of congratulating yourself for putting it up on the whiteboard and beating some fictitious coach in your mind, like he actually understands that you got to execute it on the field, and it's a completely different methodology than O'Brien. O'Brien is very, very, very smart when it comes to understanding football. I just don't think he's all that good at actually getting it executed on the field.
Yeah, it doesn't transfer to the field. Who cares, right? Yeah. If it doesn't transfer to the field. Last one. The Around the NFL staff does their big takeaways from all the games on Sunday and Monday and Thursday. 3 bullet points on each game. My favorite one on the Texans game. Houston is quickly transforming its reputation. The Texans are taking on the personality of DeMeco Ryans more and more every passing week. It was evident from the very beginning of Sunday's game against the Steelers. Houston's defense was excellent, making for another tough outing for Kenny Pickett prior to getting knocked out of the game and finishing the game by preventing the Steelers from reaching the end zone at all on Sunday. Texans are 2-2 and primed to continue ascending.
Sean, I am so glad you brought up the stark difference between this week's game and the Texans, who for how long went without scoring a touchdown on their opening drive?
3 years. They did it like twice in 3 years, literally, with O'Brien and Deshaun Watson.
Even when Deshaun Watson was playing well, they could not score on the opening drive. And that's the part that viscerally feels different. That's the part that without understanding and remembering that key stat, I couldn't figure out exactly why it felt different from the onset. And it was because the Texans were so bad. Even when things looked promising offensively, they just never got off the fast starts. And all of a sudden you're playing behind the 8 ball so many times. And so many times it felt like every scoring drive was such a slog at times, like you were reinventing the wheel. The other big indicator, Sean, it's on Sunday's game, that was like that without thinking about it, you might not realize why things look differently. How many times did you see the Texans throw a screen where, Sean, there were 3 offensive linemen set up in front of the receiver with nobody in sight?
Yeah.
With no, and again, this goes back to the attention to detail. This is why it's harder to run a screen than you might think or realize. Running a screen, you've got several people doing things that are heavily deceptive. And so your offensive linemen are pretending to pass block, and then they're getting out. You know, your running back pretending to take a handoff, and then pretending to pass block, and then getting out onto a route. Like, you've got to do a lot of chicanery to successfully execute a screen. And if you don't pay attention to detail, defenses pick up on it. Like, every single defense is going to realize, okay, well, if this guard pulls this way or if this guy's stance is this way, they're running screen out of this formation. And so far, now, like, the Texans haven't had a lot of time to create formations, but, like, those were so clean. They were so beautiful. And that was with backup offensive linemen. That begins and ends with attention to detail. That's why I get excited about Bobby Slowik's attention to detail more than anything else.